Ryan Talk Radio Network. I'm Joe Joseph, along with my good buddy John King. And before we get started there, Johnny boy, I just want to give a shout-out again to Mr. John Manfred and his new broadcast, the Manfred Minute, that's been playing the last couple of nights. He's here with us Monday to Friday from 8 p.m. to 9 p.m. Eastern. And I couldn't think of a better host to succeed Ryan Brooks as Ryan moves to the 12 to 2 slot, 12 a.m. to 2 a.m. slot. Boy, I couldn't think of a better person to do that. What a fantastic show that is. I'm always I've been, last two nights, been glued to my seat. To hell with prep. Show prep, bah.
Entertaining and informative.
Yes, I'm going to be listening to the Manfred Minute from here on out, and I suggest everybody else do so. You'll be pleasantly surprised. But anyway, folks, a whole lot of news. Of course, you heard about that shooting down in Texas. It turns out to be a spat between a couple people. Nothing of real consequence. Why? Oh, well, there wasn't an AR-15 used. Oh, well. Oh, that's not newsworthy. Put it in the poop can, if you will. Unbelievable, Johnny, But I'll tell you one thing that's encouraging, my friend, is the amount of sheriffs that have vowed to resist Obama gun control. I'm actually very heartened by that, buddy.
I was very disheartened to hear about the Texas shooting today.
Yeah.
And it seems odd to me, Joe, that all of a sudden we're having a rash of these mass shootings, especially around the time of Obama wanting to take the guns or institute gun control. Yeah. And as we had said before, that they're not going to stop with 20 children. They're not going to stop with a firefighter. They're going to keep going and going and going until they get what they want.
That's right. Incidentally, a gun-free zone. Uh-oh. Is that right? Okay, yeah. Another gun-free zone. And Alex Newman wrote a great article in the New American today. He wrote, as state governments and federal lawmakers who take their oath of office seriously work to stop the Obama administration's proposed unconstitutional infringements on the right to keep and bear arms, a wave of county sheriffs all across the country is rising up to protect gun rights, too. Dozens of chief law enforcement officers have already pledged not to enforce new gun controls, and many have even promised to actively prevent the enforcement of unconstitutional federal statutes within their jurisdictions. Elected sheriffs, as the top law enforcement officers within their counties, work for the citizens and taxpayers in their jurisdiction, not the federal government. Even the Supreme Court ruled that sheriffs cannot be compelled to follow federal dictates or mandates in a landmark case on gun control. Now with Obama pushing hard for new restrictions on gun rights, finding strong support from some anti-Second Amendment Democrats in Congress, and much of the increasingly discredited establishment media, sheriffs nationwide are putting their foot down to defend the rights of their constituents. Chief law enforcement officers from Kentucky, Oregon, Texas, California, Missouri, Idaho, Alabama, Colorado, South Carolina, Georgia, Minnesota, Florida, Nevada, Arizona, Ohio, yes, and even New York, Utah, Oklahoma, and other states have all spoken out already, many of them in unison. It seems that virtually every single day, more sheriffs are adding their voices to the expanding list of prominent lawmen who have vowed to ensure that the U.S. Constitution is respected in their jurisdictions. Quote, I'm ecstatic about the growing number of sheriffs around the country vowing to defend the Second Amendment against Obama's unlawful gun control efforts, says former Arizona Sheriff Richard Mack, a decorated lawman who sued the federal government over gun control and won before going on to found the widely respected Constitutional Sheriffs and Peace Officers Association. As the groundswell continues, we expect more and more sheriffs to come out of the woodwork and join our coalition against tyranny, said Sheriff Mack. Before Obama has even gathered a group of children together to exploit as propaganda props while unveiling his anti-gun rights machinations publicly, The plan calls for a ban on semi-automatic weapons and standard capacity magazines, universal background checks that critics say will lead to gun registration, and much more. Resistance was beginning to manifest itself. Citizens in particular were expressing alarm and speaking out. And John, you know, we've always been outspoken against any sort of infringement upon the Second Amendment. I, for one, believe that the Second Amendment shall not be infringed. Oh, much like it's written. You know, I'm one of those people that believe that the Founding Fathers meant what they say when they wrote down those words on that piece of paper.
Oh, no, these weren't suggestions. Not at all. These were beliefs that these gentlemen had. And they wanted them to be the law of the land for a reason, because they believed in them so strongly and wholeheartedly. And they understood the fundamental principles of freedom and what it took to run a real republic. Yeah,
no, you're absolutely right. And, you know, with this little old Texas thing, and the brief media coverage that it was provided, you know, to it, yeah, I'm sure you'll see that as added cannon fodder as state lawmakers begin to introduce legislation to protect gun rights in their jurisdictions and even put federal officials who attempt to enforce unconstitutional restrictions in prison. In some cases, for 4 or 5 years. So just think about that. You're going to have legislatures, state and federal, start to enact these new gun legislations, right? Meanwhile, you have the sheriffs out there that are looking to protect gun rights, and you also have lawmakers on the opposite side. This is a very, very polarized fight. Sheriffs nationwide, meanwhile, begin asserting their constituents assuring their constituents that gun rights would be safe, at least in their own counties, and that they would protect the people from federal assaults on the Second Amendment. Now, one thing that I will say, and I was very discouraged to hear this, and I played the news piece the other night on the air when it was, I think it was Wake County in North Carolina. The sheriff there said, "Well, no right is absolute." All I can say is somebody needs in that county to sit that sheriff down and explain to him in the Founding Fathers' own words what a right is and what a privilege is, so that he's crystal clear as to what that is and understand that rights are absolute.
Somebody in that county needs to send that sheriff a copy of Sheriff Mack's book.
Yes, at the very least. Or even, you know, It's Good to Be King by Michael Bednarik, or even his latest book. All I can say is that these lawmakers are in for a hell of a fight if they think that people are just going to willingly give their magazines up. You know, in New York, they're saying that with this new legislation, they have to turn in their magazines that have capacity above 7 rounds if they don't have them modified. Really? Who's going to go? What are you going to? Are you going to have like a little like a Goodwill return box or something at the local Walmart? Turn in your magazines. The question: where are those magazines going to end up? You know, when we look at Operation Gun Runner and Fast and Furious, where do you think they got all those guns from? Possibly a little bit of, you know, perhaps taking the guns off the street. Well, they resurfaced. But they resurfaced in Mexico. That's right, folks. So, I mean, you have to see through the farce. Understand, first of all, that gun control doesn't work. And second of all, you have to understand that when they take those guns, typically they end right back up on the street again. It's called job security. Folks, we'll be right back after these messages. Don't go away. When we come back, I'll talk about, 5 shot in a gun-free zone in New Orleans. All that and more when the Freedom Link returns. On the sidelines while our families slip away. The Sound of Freedom is moving to a new time, and of course you can hear it now, 12 midnight to 2 a.m. Ryan Brooks has adjusted his showtime to fit his West Coast schedule, so please make a note of the new time, 12 midnight to 2 a.m., Monday to Friday, right here on the Orion Talk Radio Network. Joe Joseph here, along with John King. We're discussing, let's see, Johnny, and this old gun control thingy. Hey, guess what, John? New Orleans. 5-shot in the gun-free zone in New Orleans. Hey, that's a gun-free zone.
What were the guns doing in a gun-free zone?
They must have walked in there of their own volition and just started shooting the place up.
Oh,
that's
my
all
goodness.
I can think of. Well, let's find out. Let's see. Breitbart's reporting. Reports indicate 5 people were shot outside a grocery store along the route for New Orleans MLK parade today. The shooting took place approximately 15 minutes after the parade itself had passed. Footage from a security camera shows the attacker opening fire from a vehicle on people standing outside the grocery store near the intersection of MLK Boulevard and LaSalle Street. No life-threatening injuries were reported. The shooter was seen fleeing the scene in a late model white vehicle. Now, how this happened is anyone's best guess, since routes from government-sanctioned parades are designated gun-free zones by Louisiana law. It's a very good question, but again, it just speaks volumes, John, to the fact that gun-free zones and gun control doesn't work, that you're not going to stop these people from doing what they're doing. And the best thing is, hey, you want to know something? If somebody else was armed on the opposite side, they could have fired back. And if they were lucky, they might have hit and killed that son of a gun for doing what he did.
Gun-free zones remind me of that little carnival game, Joe, where you pay the $1 and you get to load the BB gun up, and the ducks go across the room, and you shoot the ducks, and you shoot 3 ducks down, you win a prize. That's what reminds me when you talk about a gun-free zone.
Yeah,
because that's what you are. You're a sitting duck.
And all of this stuff is spawned off of the Sandy Hook shooting. And of course, we've offered many questions to it. Our good buddy Mike Powers did a ton of research on that, came on the broadcast, threw them out there just for people to look. And we've been getting a ton of responses. Some of them answering our questions, which is good. And others, well, they bring about 3 or 4 other questions, which is what's supposed to happen. But what I don't like is when you have high visible personalities like Jesse Ventura that come out and say things like, beware of conspiracy theories about Sandy Hook. And I say that if your head's screwed on straight, if you're spiritually grounded, and you have the facts or you have questions, you shouldn't be afraid to ask them. You shouldn't be. Because I guarantee you, folks, everybody out there with a level head knows that there's more than meets the eye to that. I mean, just look at this. This shooting down in Texas is evidence enough. It happened, and within like 15, 20 minutes, they had witness testimony on the air. You didn't have that for Sandy Hook. You really didn't have that for Sandy Hook. But anyway, Jesse Ventura writes, I don't see enough evidence to this Sandy Hook to think that this Sandy Hook was a false flag operation. This is more of a tragic event turned into political opportunity than it is a staged event. Now, I will say this in his defense. Based on the evidence right now, he's right. You can't say beyond a shadow of a doubt that it was a false flag operation. We can pose a lot of questions that have not been answered yet. But he's right. You can't draw that conclusion. And he says, was there investigative bungling and the sensationalist media reporting on verified stories? Yes. Was there confusion? Were facts lost and gained in that confusion? Yes. Are there people, even witnesses, looking for their 30 seconds in the spotlight? Yes. And are there individuals and institutions using and shaping this event for their own political agenda? Yes. And we must keep a very watchful eye on those institutions to keep them from twisting the facts of this event. He says, sadly, everything I mentioned above can, when taken out of context, make one thing manipulation one think manipulation is afoot. Most chaotic events can come across that way. In examining the event, I don't see government hands at work, mainly because they would have covered their tracks better. We can't expect them to pull off elaborately planned hoaxes while at the same time leaving behind so many easy smoking guns for us to find. Jesse, oh, really? Do we need to go back to 9/11? I mean, John, 9/11 was full of holes and sloppy cover-up.
That's the first words out of their mouth, Joe, is don't believe any crazy conspiracy theories because one of them might come too close to the truth.
And he goes on to say,
I'll believe a conspiracy theory before I believe the mainstream theory, because more often than not, the mainstream theories always seem to be contrived and cooked up.
well, he says it took years for independent investigators to uncover JFK. I disagree. It took years for us to begin scratching out the truth about 9/11. I disagree. And the reason why I disagree is because people like my good friend Tim Watts, who were watching 9/11, and he'll tell you to this day, as soon as it happened, he knew that something was up. He knew that it wasn't right. Just by the way the towers fell. 2 towers identically fall the identical way, even though they were hit on different floors. They fall the exact same way, nice and neat into their own footprint, twice.
Not only that, but at free fall speed, you would think that a tower or a building that is intact that fell the way they did would have resistance as one floor met the other. But it didn't. It fell at free fall speed as if there was nothing underneath it, which says that there was something going on below the building that was crumbling. And eyewitness testimony, as well as testimony from the fire and police that were on scene, all say they've heard explosions coming from the towers as the building was itself falling.
Yeah. So, I mean, and not to mention free fall speed through the path of most resistance. I mean, that in and of itself is a feat, because we'd almost have to exhume some of the earliest physicists and like slap them. You guys were wrong. You know, objects can fall through the path of most resistance at free fall speed. We had it wrong all this time. 500 years. You know, doesn't make any sense. But anyway, there are people that saw that for what it was instantaneously as it happened. I do know that for a second. So no, it didn't take years to scratch out the truth. He says, those of us who study real history, not state-sanctioned history, can very easily become just as close-minded and biased for conspiracy as those who stand in the way and refuse to accept the truth about our government and the people running it. Yes, to a point, but if you understand real history, you know that the government and governments of the world have done this for centuries, probably millennia. It's very easy to fall into that trap, especially when knowing how much of our history and world events are not what they appear to be. So please do not immediately jump and yell fire just because someone makes a YouTube video. Research, research, research. You can only hurt our cause by promoting false conspiracies and crackpot agendas. And I do agree with that, because I will say that there are a lot of people out there that jump the gun on a lot of things. That's why we didn't bring conspiracy, in quotation marks, into it. All we did was ask the questions that the press wouldn't ask. You know? And that's the important thing to do, folks, is dig for the answers. We've got a long way to go, but we're winning the battle, folks. Another new show to the network. It's Rapid Fire with Mike Powers, Saturday night from 10 p.m. to 12 midnight. Mike is blunt force against ignorance. You'll get the straight facts with Rapid Fire and Mike Powers. That's Saturday night, 10 p.m. to 12 midnight, right here on Orion Talk Radio. Joe Joseph here, along with John King. And I've added some riffraff to the conversation. Yes, even I stoop to the levels. Someday, we get desperate from time to time. So I brought in Popeye from FederalJack.com. What's up, buddy?
Thanks for that intro, Joe.
Just had to bust the chop. Just
now
had to
I
bust
know
the
why
chop.
Now I know why you wanted me to bring the taser, Joe.
Yes. Do you have the taser armed and ready? You got to be careful with this guy.
Where's Cooking with the King? Where's the Cooking with the King segment this evening, John? Yeah, touche.
Yes.
I wanted to just throw 2 points out to you guys really quick, let you guys chew on this. I think you might find this interesting with I was listening to the stream, and I was listening to the conversation you guys were having the past couple segments, and I found it very interesting. And I have to say, Joe, I agree with some of what Ventura said there in the end about jumping to things and everything. But, there's something that he really missed out on in the beginning. When you guys made a good point when you were pointing to how, like, Tim, he's a perfect example, somebody that right off the bat on day one was like, no. Well, when it comes to JFK, it didn't take years. There were people that day thought that the government's official story of what was going on was garbage. And from that point on, it snowballed into what the alternative investigation into the assassination became as we know it today. People like Mae Brussell. I believe many people know who she is, right? Well, if you go back and you listen to what Mae says, she started off on November 22nd, 1963. So it didn't take years for people to not buy the official story. People smelled it out right away. The difference is the internet, Jesse. That's the difference.
Yes,
the information's at your fingertips. That's why the difference between me saying, wow, that stinks, and me being able to get that point across to 1,000 people in the blink of an eye, like that, well, we have that ability now. 50 years ago, May and Penn Jones Jr. and Mark Lane and all these other people, none of them thought that that the internet or anything, they didn't have that back then. If they did, can you imagine where we'd be now?
Well, plus the narrative wasn't there either, to where conspiracy theorist wasn't really that whole name hadn't really come about yet.
Well, that's where it came from. Did you know that it actually spawned from the JFK assassination? Because many people, that's the true history of the term conspiracy theory. Most people, today, that's the other point. Today, conspiracy theory, is misused and mislabeled completely 110%. Okay?
Correct.
If I say conspiracy theory to the average person, they'll say aliens, Bigfoot, ghosts, stuff like that, right? Oh, tinfoil hattery and all this other stuff. Yep. But conspiracy theory comes about from the JFK assassination, because the JFK assassination, the official storyline is one single person did it. And the whole time, any evidence that refutes that, they always fight it on the basis of this. Okay, and I said this on all my JFK broadcasts. They always fight it on the basis of if there was more than one person, by definition, it was a conspiracy. So the term conspiracy theorist came out to label and marginalize anybody that didn't think Oswald acted alone. That's where it came from. So when you're called a conspiracy theorist today, people are misusing the term. Oh, you don't think bin Laden attacked us on 9/11. You're a conspiracy theorist. You're a tard, because even if you believe the official government story, and this even comes from Cass Sunstein, one of Obama's little czars, guys. David Ray Griffin wrote a good book about him, about how he talked about infiltrating the 9/11 truth movement. But even he admits, Joe, that the official government story of 9/11 is, by definition, a conspiracy theory, because more than one person conspired to do harm to the United States, if you believe the official version. So even by definition, believing in the official version makes you a conspiracy theorist. Thank you. Win. Popeye won. New World Order, brainwashed morons, nothing. Okay? Stop misusing the freaking term. If you think outside the box, you're a conspiracy theorist. Do you think your government has your best interests at heart? No. Well, sometimes I think politicians really and their friends, have it out for us. Well, that means they're conspiring. Thank you. Thank you for playing. We've been trained like a bunch of freaking seals, to sit back and go, conspiracy theory, point and laugh. Stop it. Stop playing into that. Seriously, it pisses me off when I hear people misusing it, and so many people don't even know where the term conspiracy theory came from. And I'm tired of even people in the know, Joe, saying, like let's say you and I are having a conversation, right? And I say, well, Joe, blah, blah, blah. And you go, and people, this isn't a conspiracy. This is true. Like, damn it, you're misusing the word. Now, I'm not saying you do that. I'm using you as an example back and forth. But you know what I mean. If you're talking to somebody on let's say Fox News does it all the time. They'll have someone talking about like vote switching, right? And they'll say, yeah, the machines were really doing it. And people, this isn't a conspiracy. This is really happening. Well, you just misused the freaking term. You know what I mean? Now you're acting like conspiracy means myth or fabricated story.
Right. Well, that's the way the narrative spun on that. And the interesting thing is that the government, from the district attorney of your local municipality on up to the federal government, they prosecute people by the thousands based on conspiracy theory. And you could go to jail for conspiracy theory.
The government, when they wanted to extradite, what's his name, James Earl Ray, for the killing of Martin Luther King Jr.
Yeah.
Okay. In fact, if anybody paid attention last night, you might have heard this tidbit of information because this was brought up on my broadcast when I was going over MLK.
Yes,
What the
MLK spectacular? Yes.
Yes. And do you know what the charge was that the United States government initially extradited James Earl Ray back to the United States on? Come on.
Cross-country old lady beating.
Conspiracy to kill Martin Luther King Jr.
Yeah,
they said that it was part of a conspiracy. But what's the official story? He was a lone nut racist guy. Yeah. But they extradited him back to this country on conspiracy charges.
Yep. It is interesting, when you look at the dynamic of how that's changed and why they've changed the narrative to vilify people. It's just another way for them to take away critical thinking skills and for them to, for people to just go with the mainstream definition of things or the mainstream version of events. Because if you don't, it's just like at school, At public school, if you go to public school, they vilify you for being smart. As a matter of fact, if you're smart, you're an outcast. Why? You have to be cool, and to be cool, you got to be stupid, duh. Have you ever seen kids these days? They don't even walk looking at you anymore. They walk with their head buried in a frickin' phone the whole time. But that's cool.
Dude, my wife and I have made it like a mission that like when we go out to dinner or something, because I'll find myself playing with my phone and she'll do the same thing. We're purposely putting our phones down once a week. I really don't have a lot of money, so maybe once every 2 weeks. Once a week if I get it, if I'm lucky, but usually it's like once every 2, maybe 3 weeks we get a chance to go to a local diner, and I like to take her out just for a simple, very cheap meal, and we like to just spend a little quiet time together and talk, and we purposely put our phones over to the end of the table, because if you look around, you'll see people, there'll be 8 people at a table, and not one of them is conversing with each other. Maybe they are via text, but they're all in, face first in their little machines.
Just dehumanize you. Yeah,
completely.
They dehumanize you. Yeah, I mean, you lose that socialization ability. Go ahead, John.
I don't mind that so much as when you're out in public and you see these young people when they got their pants down around their knees and all you can see is underwear and ass.
Yeah, that sucks too. Yeah, don't get me wrong, that sucks too. But I mean, what's even worse is they're walking with their head buried into a smartphone now too. So it just amplifies the problem.
Well, they don't get the look when they cross the street, and then survival of the smartest takes effect, and they get hit by a car. They won't make a new generation, and humanity is therefore one step closer to being saved.
Don't laugh, but just like any problem that arises its head with new technology, right? And something comes up to the surface and rises up. How does a politician deal with a problem? Politicians can't solve problems, right? So what do they do when a problem arises and people go, oh my God, there's a problem, do something? They go, okay, we'll make a law banning it. So there's actually states, and I'm sure there's stuff on the federal law, but I know there's states that are working on, and cities too, that are working on laws to ban texting while walking. Because too many people have gotten hurt while walking and texting and dicking around their MP3 players, and they get hit by a bus or they fall into open manhole. So
that's great, but where, Popeye, where does the line of personal responsibility fall? Why do we need a law to legislate that?
Dude, I don't think we need a law at all. I think it's retarded, but you know what I mean.
When we come back, folks, I'm going to pit 2 writers against one another. Folks, get your day started off the right way with Morning Brew, hosted by Gwen Caldwell. Up-to-date news and information, plus some of the best guests you'll hear on Midday Radio. Check out the Morning Brew with Gwen Caldwell, weekdays, 12 noon, right here on the Orion Talk Radio Network. Joe Joseph here, along with John King, and Popeye even came in, and he's going to spend some quality time with us. And we're I'm gonna pit a couple of writers against one another now. On the one side, I've got Don Papandrea from the Huffington Post. And on the other side, I've got Elizabeth Cameron from LouRockwell.com. And I'll let you decide who makes more sense here. First, we'll go to the Huffington Post. The president is right on target with gun legislation. She says, I'm baffled, floored. Oh, who am I kidding? I'm outraged by some of the twisted logic being thrown around in the aftermath of the Sandy Hook school shooting to justify the gun worship culture in this country. I believe in the Constitution as strongly as I believe in the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Oh, really? But that liberty includes a fundamental peace of mind that when I drop my children off at school, they will be safe from automatic weapons. But they should be safe from automatic weapons because they're already illegal. They've been for a long time. What are you talking about, woman? Anyway, what was it that Spider-Man's Uncle Ben said? Quote, with great power comes great responsibility. A right as powerful as the right to bear arms is a big deal and should indeed be wielded by only the most responsible of adults, who are willing to adhere to hefty rules, regulations, boundaries, limits, and yes, even jump through a few hoops. My blood's starting to boil, folks. I don't know if I can take much more of this. Anyway, rights don't come without making some concessions. I have the right to wear Pumas and drink Poland Spring. Yet I'm intelligent enough to understand that society is safer because I agree to take off my sneakers and leave my liquid containers behind when I pass through airport security. I love me a margarita on occasion, but I know not to give one to my kids or operate a vehicle with one in my hand. We vilify cigarette smokers and segregate them to clearly designated smoking areas because of the potential harm their smoke can cause others. Yet we can't imagine a world in which we designate our school buildings as no-gun zones. Why can't gun rights activists realize that for the greater good and safety of our nation and our children, stricter gun laws are a must? No one is proposing to take away the Second Amendment. Oh, really? What society is asking, at least the part of society that is sick and tired of burying innocent victims of gun violence, is that we put some restrictions in place all across the country and get a little more selective as to who is worthy of this precious right to bear arms. I can't take it anymore. I mean, right from the get-go, this lady is a loon. Don Papandrea, you are an uninformed loon. I am putting you on record now. Folks, do not believe a word this lady says, ever, in anything, in any way, for the love of God. She lost me. You know where she lost me? But that liberty includes a fundamental peace of mind that when I drop my kids off at school, they will be safe from automatic weapons. Popeye.
Tell the government to stop supplying weapons to automatic weapons to drug cartels and stuff like that, and killing innocent little kids and people and men and women over in Mexico. Okay, because that's where the automatic weapons are going.
Yeah, but the
semi-automatic weapons that are being used. Now that's a different story, but they are semi-automatic weapons.
But what about this? What about this? How about rights do not come without making some concessions? What do you think about that?
Well, obviously she doesn't know what a right is. You see, the problem is these people try to redefine what the term right is. They're trying to get people, well, look, rights are rights, but, yeah, I had a conversation at an Occupy rally last year when Occupy Miami was going on, and I had a conversation about freedom with a guy, and he had the balls to say to me, and I quote, nobody can have complete and utter freedom because then they could just do whatever they want. And then What happens if they wanted to hurt somebody? I said, well, that violates natural law. So that they're already violating a law. Yeah, but we need government to keep people from doing things like that. Government doesn't stop people from doing things like that. If that were the case, there would be no rape, no murder, no crime, no pedophilia, none of that, right? Technically,
right.
if government prevented all of that, nothing bad would happen.
Exactly, but yet it happens all the time. And finally, let me get your thoughts on this final, and then I want to get to the other one. What society is asking, at least the part of society that is sick and tired of burying innocent victims of gun violence, is that we put some restrictions in place all across the country and get a little more selective as to who is worthy of this precious right to bear arms. Well, Popeye, if somebody was deemed to be worthy of something, wouldn't that be granting them a privilege, which is not a right at all?
Again, rights are not granted by douchebags in suits.
There you go.
Themselves president or senator or bureaucrat, whatever, or chief, whatever, or whatever the frig you want to call yourself, okay? You do not grant anybody their rights. This is what really pisses me off. People in government, these idiots that get so self-absorbed with their power, they're like, well, I can take your rights away. No, you cannot. Did you create me and everything else around here? Did you put life? Are you where my soul and everybody else's soul emanates from? Are you the end and the beginning, the alpha and the omega? Are you? Well, no, I don't even know what the hell you're talking about. Exactly. So how the hell do you take away my rights? You don't even know what I'm talking about. Okay? My rights came to me when I came out of my mother's womb.
That's
the Constitution and the Bill of Rights merely enumerate, meaning that lets the government know, hey, douchebags, I know what my rights are. So you can't F with me because I'm aware of what my rights are.
That's right. And we have the rights. The government has a privilege. Now, let me get to this one. This is called Lies in the State by Elizabeth Cameron. This is from LouRockwell.com. She says, I know there are some honorable people in government. I've even met some. This article's not about them, but it's about the politicians, hereinafter referred to as, quote, the government, who aid and abet the proliferation of politically expedient lies in 1,000 sneaky ways. They would appear to be the majority, or things would be better than they are. I often hear questions like these. Why doesn't the government address the issue of the link between psychotropic drugs and mass shootings? Why do they talk only about gun control as a means to stop the violence? Why don't they get it? Why are they so dumb? Listen, they're not dumb. They know exactly what they're doing. And when it comes to the mass shootings, despite all the sympathetic things they say, they actually find such crisis useful. Problem, reaction, solution is a traditional tool used by authoritarian regimes to expand their grip. This was once affirmed by Rahm Emanuel, Obama's former White House chief of staff, when he said in a rare moment of candor, you never want a serious crisis to go to waste. And what I mean by that, it's an opportunity to do things you think you could not have done before. Hence, or AKA, the Hegelian dialectic. If the federal gun grabbers actually wanted solutions to the problem of mass shootings, they would look for actual causes. Without extreme public pressure, they're not going to do this. They will only look for causes, however suspicious or specific, that support their position that more government control is the only solution. And they will try to paint as crazy anybody who argues otherwise. Here you go. Truth. Psychiatric drugs are implicated as a causative factor in mass shootings. Truth. Gun-free zones allow for the acclimation of many bodies in an attack. Those are some good truths. How about lies? We must pass more gun laws to keep guns out of the hands of violent criminals. Another lie. We must have gun-free zones to keep our kids safe. Yeah. Or we need more psychotropic drugs to handle people with violent tendencies. Yeah. Big pharma profits from the expanding market of psychotropic drugs. Government gains power from civilian disarmament. They're not interested in solutions. For them, no matter how horrible this sounds, the slaughter of little kids in government schools presents them with a valuable opportunity. It provides fuel for their propaganda fires. They will, of course, never admit this. They will express only the deepest sympathy for our loss. Any politician who really wants to solve the problem of mass shootings should be standing up loudly in opposition to gun control. Not only the current push for new restrictions, but also Second Amendment infringements already in place, and should be calling for an immediate investigation into the connection between psychotropic drugs and mass shootings. Those politicians who prefer not to do this whatever they may say to the contrary, are complicit in the lies and therefore part of the problem. The push for psychotropic drugs is built on a pack of lies. So is the push for gun control. But no matter how normal and sensible the lies are made to sound, they are told to keep the problem in place because the problem serves the state. And this is evil. The way to handle this is to keep exposing the lies and keep telling the truth. Then, as we muggles say, truth will out. Truth is more powerful than lies. Okay, what do you think, Popeye?
I really want to get a cricket bat and just, dude. First
With
of all,
holes? You gonna put holes in it?
yeah, so there's less wind resistance.
Yes.
I'm just getting irritated with the argument because there is no argument and it's just complete fabrications and BS. I mean, well, there's no proof that guns save lives. Okay, lie. That's a complete and utter lie. Myself and many other broadcasters, including you and Tim and everybody else on this network practically, have at least once, if not twice, had days where they played clips of people defending themselves with firearms. But that's a side caveat. That's not even what the Second Amendment's for, Joe.
No, that's right. It's not. It's for fending off a tyrannical government, which is what we're fast becoming here in the United States. Folks, hour number 1 is done. Hour number 2 is on the way. When we come back, John King gives his King Court, and we'll talk, is FEMA a threat to the American public? All that when the Freedom Link returns after the news.
Our Constitution.
It's hour number 2 of the Freedom Link here on the Orion Talk Radio Network. I'm Joe Joseph, along with my good buddy John King, and my very special... you're not really a guest. You're more like... what would you call him, John? I don't know. It's Trash Popeye night, so come on. Give it your word.
Troublemaker?
Well, that's being very... That's not good. Come on. You can do better than that, Johnny.
Transient.
Okay, transient. Very good. That's good. It almost sounds intellectual, too. That's good. Yeah, sure. Our transient buddy.
a big word.
Sounds intellectual for the almost intellectual guy.
That's a pretty big word for you there, John. Did
Yes,
that
it is.
tax you out for the evening? Are you sure you're going to be able to handle King's Court?
He must have
I've
his
got a
teeth.
headache. I've got a headache now.
Yeah, I was going to say, I figured. I smell something burning. But anyway, folks, it's time to call the King's Court into session. So, John King, take it away.
Thank you. Yesterday was Martin Luther King's birthday. A man, although one of many that fought for civil rights. Just what are civil rights? Civil rights are the rights which the population or people are granted by living in a particular nation which subscribes to endowing its people with equal privilege and responsibilities. The Civil Rights Act of 1964 outlawed racial segregation in schools, public places, and in a job place. The Civil Rights Act also later amended to include the women in the category to help further their fight for equality. The Civil Rights Act was introduced by President John F. Kennedy in 1963. Did you catch it? People are granted by living in a nation which subscribes to endowing its people with equal privileged responsibility. Who granted these civil rights? The government. Now let's look at our natural rights, which are spelled out or enumerated in the Constitution. These are also mentioned in the Declaration of Independence. We hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights. Among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the people. That whenever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or abolish it, and to institute new government, laying down its foundation on such principles and organizing its powers in such form as to them shall seem most likely to affect their safety and happiness. Prudence indeed will dictate that governments long established should not be changed for light and transient causes, and accordingly all experience has shown that Mankind are more disposed to suffer while evils are sufferable than to right themselves by abolishing the forms to which they are accustomed. That is where we are now, folks. But when a long train of abuses and usurpations pursuingly, invariably, the same object evinces a design to reduce them under absolute despotism. It is their right, it is their duty to throw off such government and to provide new guards for their security. Such has been the patient sufferance of these colonies, and such is now the necessity which constrains them to alter their former systems of government. These rights are given to you by the Creator, the right to equality, life, and to live free. And when these rights are threatened, the right to provide guards for their safety is instituted. Civil rights can be taken from you at any time by the government because the government granted them to you. Your natural rights were granted to you from the Creator and cannot be taken from you by the government that you instituted because we, the people, give the government its power. The only way to lose your natural right is for you to give them away. You have a mouth. Therefore, you should have the right to free speech and self-expression. You know how to read and write, and therefore you should be able to read and write what you want. In a free society, the press knows no bounds. That's how it is today. There are free speech zones set up away from political events so they won't be covered in the media. The media itself is run by the globalist think tank called the Council on Foreign Relations. The press is always being told what to say and what not to say. And one of the signs of despotism is when information is stifled. So then is progress and society collapses. That in itself is a king's court for another night. But if we give away our natural rights of protection and the right to bear arms, then we will never see it again. In the 5,000 years or 1 billion years of humanity, whichever you choose to believe, it took us that long for our own species to recognize these common sense rights that we take for granted today. Should we be willing to consign them to history so quickly? I often think of that lone person standing before the army of tanks in Tiananmen Square, China, holding back a nation's military for that brief moment. He knew freedom, and he paid the ultimate price. Yes, this person was ultimately tortured and killed for that act, but it only took one to stop the tanks. What would have happened if more people would have stood with him? I often wonder. Indeed, we must stand together, or we will hang separately. Court adjourned.
Why, thank you, John King. That was a fantastic segment, by the way, I must say. You really outdid yourself with that one, buddy.
Thank you.
And, the question is raised, is FEMA a threat to the American public? I want to bring this up because it's kind of taken a back door. Or a back seat, I should say. A back seat to a lot of the other issues that are going on in the world. And remember,
Joe,
folks,
how is FEMA dangerous, Joe? I don't understand. Don't they just give out vouchers for floods and stuff?
Yeah, of course they do. They give out little cards. They give out Obama phones and everything else, right? So you got this article by the Western Center for Journalism, and folks, this is something you can't get tunnel vision when you start talking about these issues, Second Amendment and everything else. You want to make sure you pay attention so that nothing gets snuck through. It says a nationwide flu outbreak could be sufficient excuse to call up the National Guard's Rapid Response Parallel Support Module to take control of a national emergency with possible declaration of martial law protocols. According to a North Carolina police lieutenant, in some 3 to 6 months, declaration of martial law could be made throughout the nation. In a 2-part radio broadcast by Virginia pastor, Lieutenant McCoy has attracted the attention of more than 20,000 listeners. We're in huge trouble, he says, as he calls up memories of white granite gravestones all over Europe, gravestones marking the final resting place of veterans who died for us during World War II. Tragically, many of our veterans are now referred to as potential domestic terrorists by President Obama's Department of Homeland Security. Men who fought in Iraq and Afghanistan have been declared risks should they choose to participate or purchase a firearm for private use. A devout Christian, the 31-year-old lawman tells listeners, I cry. When guns are gone, you won't be able to worship the Creator. Gone. Freedom's gone. When Katrina made its way through New Orleans, leaving portions of the city in ruins, George Bush praised FEMA Director Michael Brown, saying, Brownie, you did a heck of a job, buddy. Woo! Connecticut firearms manufacturer Ruger has made it easy for you to petition your local congresspersons and let them know how you truly feel about a restriction of our Second Amendment right to defend ourselves from predators in a government gone awry. Please take the time to click the ad link on the front page of Orion Talk Radio and help to defend our Second Amendment right. Joe Joseph here, along with John King and Popeye from FederalJack.com and Down the Rabbit Hole. And I was talking about the article, Is FEMA a threat to the American public? And, it continues. It says, perhaps it's time to ask the true purpose of FEMA and other federal agencies. When the necessity arises, National Guard units under martial law paradigms will be rolled out for control of widespread domestic unrest. A 2009 report discusses something called a stability police force, resembling a hybrid military law enforcement entity created under the guise of controlling domestic riots. Use of National Guard units became familiar to residents of New Orleans during the Katrina episode. So many citizens may initially not consider it unusual to see Guard members serving alongside FEMA in these 10 regions. Executive orders have been on the book for a half a century now, empowering the Federal Emergency Management Agency to take control of everything from public and private communications, energy and transportation, to housing and more. And since 9/11, the president has been given nearly limitless power, permitting officers of the executive branch to ignore completely the constitutional rights of the American people. In March 2012, Barack Obama created Executive Order number 13603 entitled National Defense Resources Preparedness. In this executive order, Obama essentially gave himself the authority to declare martial law in times of war and peace. War or peace. No longer will the federal government need the excuse of a disaster to impose its full will and authority on the American public. Lieutenant McCoy was right when he observed that we are in huge trouble. The question is, when will we, the people, have the courage to reclaim our constitutional rights? What do you think, Popeye?
People need to stand up and get angry, dude. I mean, there's no doubt about it. Look, so people understand something. I know that we've talked a lot about gun rights and self-defense and all this, but it's not self-defense against the crazy guy down the street that the Second Amendment was intended for. You see, 230 years ago, there was no question of whether or not you shot some moron who was trying to come in your house at 3 a.m. If someone was even on your property that shouldn't have been on your property, you shot them. It was basic survival, okay? Same concept that it is today. If someone's in your house at 3 a.m., obviously they're probably not there to go shopping, usually people break in when no one's home. So if they break in when someone's home, they probably have more intentions of doing harm than robbing, okay? So therefore, you would need a weapon to defend yourself. And again, over 230 years ago when the Constitution was written and the Declaration of Independence and everything, there was no question of whether or not you could shoot somebody in self-defense. You did it, and if you were brought to trial, you went to trial, and it was handled in court as it's supposed to be. Okay. 2, there was no shooting if they shot for sport, you just shot for sport. It was a way of life with guns. There wasn't any question about that. 3, hunting. There was no question about hunting. If you didn't hunt, you didn't eat. So there wasn't, the Second Amendment allows you to hunt for food and eat. No, morons, okay? That's another irrelevant straw man argument. So all those aside, what is the Second Amendment for, Popeye? Well, it serves 2 purposes. One, it allows for the citizenry to be equally armed as any military unit or federal agency. Therefore, there's a balance of power. That's what it is. It's a balance of power. That's what the Second Amendment is at a base level, ladies and gentlemen. They're trying to convince you to give up your power. That's what this is all about. Because you have to acquiesce. Remember that. It's the way the Constitution actually works. It's actually written in there that you have to acquiesce. Now, if you give up your rights willingly, then that's fine. They haven't actually committed a constitutional any treason or anything. A lot of people would think, oh, they did, but no, not if they can get public opinion to go for it. They need people to acquiesce. So what's the second thing that the Second Amendment is for then? If it's not just about defending against tyranny and being on an equal playing field. Well, Admiral Yamamoto said it best, Joe, during talks in the Japanese ranks about the invasion of the mainland coming through the West Coast, which they actually talked about. The Japanese had talked about invading the United States.
Isn't he the guy that said, that's fried rice, you plick?
Yeah, same guy.
Okay, just checking. Okay.
And you know what Yamamoto said? This guy, he was the architect behind the invasion of Pearl Harbor. So obviously this guy's really smart. You know what Yamamoto said?
He said that he's going to need a big landscaper to take care of all those blades of grass in the United States. Ain't that right?
Exactly. He said, I would never dream of invading the mainland United States, for there would be a gun behind every blade of grass. And they knew that not only would everybody have a gun, Joe, but the testicular fortitude and the wherewithal to use the damn things.
It was a different time back then, I'll tell you what. Well, let me say this. It was a different time. There was more patriotism, I would say, back then. I mean, of course, you know, taking out patriotism was one of Adam Weishaupt's 7 goals of achieving world domination. And that was in 1776. And here we are now, and look at just how void of everything we are. I mean, when it comes to feeling, and everything's fed to you, and everything's so convenient at the touch of your fingertips. You know, you can go and get any information you want. You can order things now without having to go to a store. Everything is so easy, easy. And that's what's going to happen, folks. Everybody's just going to get to that comfort level where, you know, you forget how to do canning and hunting and all these things that it used to be an art that was passed down from, you know, father to son. And it just doesn't happen anymore. And then they're going to have to drop the hammer. And let me tell you, it's going to be ugly. And it's going to be ugly soon. Just think about it. Last night I played that O'Reilly clip. O'Reilly's talking about economic collapse. You know, if he's talking about economic collapse and it's actually hitting mainstream, talking about like the things that Ron Paul talked about,
He's so two-faced, too.
He is, though. I know
because he sits there and he talks about how, like, they're not telling you about this. Oh, really, Bill? And you've been the one lone voice in the wilderness,
He's Johnny
right,
on
Bill?
the spot when it comes to being that shining beacon of truth in the cloudy depths of deception.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, right on. But when he comes out with something as spot on, and like I said, a broken clock strike twice a day.
I was surprised when I heard that. I heard you play that clip last night, dude, before I went on air, and I was like, wow, O'Reilly on Fox talking about economic problems? Huh?
Yeah. Normally they're all rosy about, well, you know, we've got to do this and we got to invest more and everything else to get this, the very, very fragile recovery. Yeah. I don't know about you guys. I haven't felt a recovery. Johnny Bag of Donuts, your thoughts?
Joe, I'm reminded to when Popeye had mentioned about someone being on your property at 3 a.m. and it brought back the memory of when I was shot at for being on someone's property very late at night. And I quickly learned the distance to be from the end of a 12 gauge with birdshot in it. You know, there's nothing like the feeling of a birdshot raining down at you through the tree tops to make you move a little faster very, very late at night. That's when I was a young boy out pranking for Halloween. Been shot at a couple times.
Yeah, rock salt rounds. Oh, boy. The sting. Ow.
Take away the guns and you take away the person's ability to defend themselves for life and property.
Nope, you're absolutely right. People don't realize, those that have never owned a gun before, you just don't know. And unless you have that life experience, you're never going to know. So why don't you try and get some? Get you some when we come back. U.S. government claims, just like the Nazis, that the truth is too complicated and dangerous to disclose to the public. We'll be right back after these messages. Just a reminder about the Orion Shipping Banner. If you like what you hear on Orion Talk Radio, you can help us with a personal donation through our online shipping banner. Look for it on our website on the left-hand side. Give it a click and you can help us spread the truth by supporting one of the fastest-growing talk radio outlets in the world. We sincerely thank you for helping us get the truth out. Orion Talk Radio, news and views beyond the mainstream media. Joe Joseph here, along with Johnny King and Popeye from FederalJack.com. I found this other article kind of interesting, and this is Washington's blog, who wrote, U.S. government claims, just like the Nazis, that the truth is too complicated and dangerous to disclose to the public. History repeats, he says. In the classic history of Nazi Germany, they thought they were free, Milton Mayer writes. What happened here was the gradual habituation of the people, little by little, to be governed by surprise, to receive decisions deliberated in secret, to believing that the situation was so complicated that the government had to act on information which the people could not understand, or so dangerous that even if the people could not understand it, it could not be released because of national security. And their sense of identification with Hitler, their trust in him, made it easier to widen the gap and reassured those who would otherwise have worried about it. This separation of government from people, this widening of the gap, took place so gradually and so insensibly, each step disguised, perhaps not even intentionally, as a temporary emergency measure or associated with true patriotic allegiance or with real social purposes. And all the crisis and reforms, real reforms too, so occupied the people that they did not see the slow motion underneath of the whole process of government growing remoter and remoter. Similarly, America has, little by little, gone from a nation of laws to a nation of powerful men making laws in secret. Indeed, even Congress doesn't know half of what others are doing. Secretive, unaccountable agencies are making life and death decisions without which affect our most basic rights. They provide secret evidence to courts which cannot be checked, and often without any such evidence, even from judges. For example, quote, I find myself stuck in a paradoxical situation in which I cannot solve a problem because of contradictory constraints and rules. A verifiable catch-22, the judge wrote. I can find no way around this thicket of laws and precedents that effectively allow the executive branch of our government to proclaim as perfectly lawful certain actions that seem on their face incompatible with our Constitution and laws, while keeping the reasons for their conclusion a secret. The government uses secret evidence to spy on Americans, prosecute leaking or terrorism charges, even against U.S. soldiers, and even assassinate people. And the government goes after whistleblowers and reporters who say too much. U.S. government spokesmen pretend, just like the Nazis, that the situation is so complicated that the government has to act on information which the people could not understand, and it's so dangerous that even if people could not understand it, it could not be released because of national security. As Firedog Lake notes, like the iron fist of the Nazis, American must submit to roving surveillance and warrantless searches without the requirement of judges' authorization. Surveillance laws are part of a larger arsenal of weapons against political dissidents and whistleblowers. Most Americans don't know the Patriot Act authorizes secret charges relying on secret evidence and secret grand jury statements. Under the Patriot Act, Americans have no right to know who has accused them of what criminal activities or the dates of the alleged offense. They are not even told what laws was broken. The government has power to lock up Americans on military bases or other prisons without a hearing or trial. We can be detained indefinitely without any rights of due process at all. All of this happened in Germany, as in America today, because the governments whipped up so much fear of attack by demonizing the enemy and declaring an open-ended war that people became complacent and stopped thinking for themselves. I'll tell you what, that to me, that hit spot on, and that's kind of where we're at right now. And isn't it interesting, Popeye, that, we are just really paralleling Germany to a T. I mean, Department of Homeland Security. I mean, really.
One of the first things Hitler did when he took over Germany, right? And he, for instance, when they annexed Austria, and a lot of people, I read the letter from this old lady that lived there. She was a little girl at the time. She was 11 years old. And she said that 98% of the people voted him in. Not voted him in. They voted to annex Austria to Germany and let Hitler be their dictator. And then, she said everything was great at first, and then they socialized medicine, and right off the bat, it went because everybody had access to medicine. So now people who might not have gone to the doctor if they had a stomach ache immediately, now would go to the doctor. It might only be gas, and maybe if they had waited a half hour, they'd find out it was gas. But because they had free health care, they get a splinter in their big toe, and they're at the doctor's office. So she said the doctors would come in at 7 a.m., and there would be 40 or 50 people waiting to be seen already. And it just snowballed from there. The money, the taking away the guns. She said then he came for the guns. They took the guns. And it was under the guise of, crimes have been committed using guns. So to make sure everybody is safer and to make for a more utopia type society where no one gets hurt, we're going to register the guns. So that way if a crime happens, then we can immediately figure out whose gun did it and trace it to the person, right? Oh, it sounds like a good idea. We want to be a good citizen. Everybody ran and registered their weapons. As soon as they had the weapons registered, no sooner did they have them registered, the police then turned around and said, you know what? It might just be better if everybody turned in your guns. That would make things much safer. And now it was pointless, and this is in her own words, and I quote, it was pointless to resist because they knew how many weapons you had and where they were, end quote. So there was no point in resisting to give up. Oh, I don't have guns. What are you talking about? Or I sold them or whatever. It was too late because they had just literally marched into the police station not days before and had the police write down what type of weapon, who owns it, and then stamp it with a serial number and then take that serial number and record it to that person. So now they actually created the registry. So, of course, there was no point in lying to the cops and saying, I don't have weapons. And they were living in this perfect utopia after all. Why would they want to do battle with the cops? They wouldn't want to shoot it out, so they gave up their guns. And then once they gave up their guns, then that's it. It was on like Donkey Kong, because then the First Amendment, you don't have that, okay? If they take away our guns, you don't have the right to give the middle finger to the government anymore. Oh, you might think you do, and you might still actually do have that right, but go ahead and give the middle finger to the government without the Second Amendment. Go ahead. Ban the Second Amendment. Give up your right. Remember, I said the rights come to us when we're born. You have to acquiesce to give that away. So go ahead. Acquiesce. Give away your right to self-protection, and then go ahead and give the government the finger, again, like you're doing now. Yeah, suck it, government. I'm cool. I can say F you in my music lyrics. Well, not anymore you can't, because guess what? You don't have any guns. So how are you going to back it up when they come with guns and tanks to tell you shut your mouth? Yeah, but they would never do that because history's never proven that, right, Joe?
No, right? Yeah, we'll be getting them with our black powder rifle. Oh, we could probably have bolt action too. Oh,
First of all, nothing for nothing, okay? But semi-auto is the only thing that even keeps us somewhat on an even playing field, okay? And that is it.
Yeah.
Let's be honest. They have fully automatic weapons, tanks, drones, planes, satellite technology, laser weapons, sound weapons, okay? So really, semi-automatic technology, that's what you're worried about? Really?
Yeah, you're really worried about that? Come on.
What'd you say yesterday? They had laser beams that could, melt you from outer space, and you're really worried about my semi-automatic rifle?
Yeah. Somebody's got that shiny red button on their desk. Oh, let's see, who am I going to vaporize today? Next thing you know, it's like, hey, man, where'd Charlie go? What's that pale pink mist over there?
You remember the movie, what was it, Weird Science or whatever?
Oh, yeah, dude. Oh, yeah, with the popcorn.
Yeah, and what were they using? It was an airborne Air Force, jet with a laser attached to it, shooting the laser from the belly of the jet. Now, go look on YouTube a couple years ago and look what they were playing with. And you tell me, you think they were trying to tell you what they were playing with?
Well, that technology is so old, too, in comparison to, just think about it.
Dude, if you know about it, think about what you don't know about.
Hey, well, that's my thing, man. Tesla was doing crap like this over 100 years ago. Why don't we have hover cars? We should have hover cars now. They got anti-grav technology. I just don't get it. I do get it. I understand why it is, but their ones always speaking, well, it's for the greater good. Yeah, well, so is my hover car. I want a damn hover car, man. It's for the greater good. I want free energy. That's for the greater good, This other crap is for the birds, is what it is. Folks, last segment of the broadcast coming up. We'll be right back after these messages. Don't go away. Welcome back, folks. Check out the Information Nation with Ken every Sunday night from 9 to 11 p.m. Host Ken Hildebrand takes a hard look at the news that newsmakers soon learn to regret. Ken calls them the way he sees them, and sometimes it ain't pretty. So tune into the Information Nation with Ken Sunday nights, 9 to 11 Eastern, right here, exclusively on the Orion Talk Radio Network. Joe Joseph, John King, and our special guest, Popeye, the Sailor Man, here. And you know what, Popeye? I got something to say.
Here we go.
got nothing. I got nothing. Oh, I'm feeling it, baby. Got a little marrows going. Sorry.
You're such a dildo.
That was for you. Sorry.
Oh, man. Yeah, sometimes you need a little humor, ladies and gentlemen. You need to.
Yeah, sometimes you need a little humor. No, but
inside joke. It's just used to break up the monotony.
Yes, well, and the reason why I got nothing is because this guy David Attenborough says in the Telegraph today, humans are plague on Earth. Humans are plague on the Earth that need to be controlled by limiting population growth, according to Sir David Attenborough. And people wonder why. That all I can say is that
you know what I think. I think that's because apparently studies show that when elitists are rounded up and thrown into a fiery pit, less people die on the planet.
It's amazing. It's amazing. It says the television presenter said that humans are threatening their own existence and that of other species by using up the world's resources. He says the only way to save the planet from famine and species extinction is to limit human population growth. Quote, we're a plague on the Earth. It's coming home to roost over the next 50 years or so. It's not just climate change. It's sheer space. Why? Places to grow food for this enormous horde. This is an enormous horde. I can't make this up, folks. I mean, this is a Telegraph.
Did this guy in Prince Philip go have lunch before he wrote this?
They probably did a lot more than have lunch. I'm thinking
that's true. They probably rubbed all over each other, and then he wrote it. Remember, Prince Philip's the same douche that wants to come back as a germ and wipe out the entire race.
Yeah, maybe this is like his pen name or something. I don't know. But it says either we limit our population growth or the natural world will do it for us. And the natural world is doing it for us right now. Sir David, who's a patron of the Optimum Population Trust, that's something to look up there, Popeye. Optimum Population Trust has spoken out before about the frightening explosion in human numbers and the need to invest in sex education and other voluntary means of limiting population in developing countries. I want to know what other voluntary means he thinks of.
It sounds like eugenics. That's what this is. I mean, that's exactly what he's talking about. He's encouraging eugenics.
Oh, yeah. It says, we keep putting on programs about famine in Ethiopia. That's what's happening. Too many people there. They can't support themselves. And it's not an inhuman thing to say. It's the case. Until humanity manages to sort itself out and get coordinated view about the planet, it's going to get worse and worse. Sir David, whose landmark series are repeated from Monday on BBC Two, start with Life on Earth, and has also been spoken out about the change in the wildlife documentaries during his lifetime. The 86-year-old said commentary from presenters like himself are becoming less necessary as camera work is able to tell the story. So basically what he says is, well, yes, we are just a plague on this planet, and that we need to be controlled. The population needs to be controlled. He's another one, dude. He's just another one of those people out there pushing the depopulation agenda. And I don't get where they get this figure that in the next 70 years, the population of the earth will grow 40%, when in the next 10 years, we're going to see the first reduction in recorded human history of the population of the earth. It's actually going to go down.
Well, how many kids has this Attenborough had anyways? Because all these elitists that say that we need population control all have like 10 kids. Look at Ted Turner. How many has he got? Like 4 or 5? But yet he's one of the first ones that say that we need population control. Well, why don't you start with yourself?
I would love to see that. As a matter of fact, I think that maybe they should have like front billing at a almost like a Coliseum style event. I mean, we could make it as depending on how voluntary it is, and if they would like to do this, and we'll offer this to all the elitists out there. We'll make it merciful. Or it could be bad too. I mean, if you just keep on doing what you're doing, I guarantee it's going to end in your demise. It's just one of those things. You can do it the easy way, or you can do it the hard way. I'm sure we can figure out how Kevorkian did it. Make it nice and easy for you. But you want to keep pushing this issue, taking the guns away, enslaving, population control. I have to say, you're in for a rude awakening. May not seem like it right now, but we know you're crapping your pants. And that's why you do.
Didn't Bill Clinton say something about you're really going to piss them off or something to that effect?
Yeah, it was just like the other day, wasn't it?
Yeah, he said something about
you're really
going to make the Tea Party revise or something, but I think he realizes that they're starting to tread on thin ice. That's really not a smart thing to do.
The gun thing, dude, let me tell you something. It ain't going to be the Tea Party that rises up. They're going to wish it was a freaking Tea Party.
Yeah, you got that right.
Yeah.
That's not who's going to rise up there, Bill, but yeah, okay, you could call it the Tea Party if you'd like.
We'll say it's time for tea. That's fine. Yeah, that you'll be wishing that it was tea and crumpet time.
Yeah, meet us at 12 o'clock for tea.
Gosh, on the common, if you will.
Yes, lead-filled tea.
Yes. But
that's why they know better. See, if they push it, that's what's going to happen, and then they don't want that. Well, of course, they don't want it yet, because the outcome is not as controllable as it is if they can get some of the people to turn in their guns and turn on the others. If they can foment infighting, then they can start violence, because then they have the infighting. See, that's the key. This is the same way that they did the Civil War. It's the same thing.
Yeah. The one thing that I worry about, and I don't know how valid of a concern it is first of all, I just don't see that they have the people to warrant, any sort of like prolonged civil war. I just don't. I can't imagine, family turning against one another, and it's a different dynamic here in America today than it was in the Civil War, where you have families stretched out all over the country, where family was really centralized. And you all lived in one spot. Everybody lived in a house or two houses. Life was a lot different. Now everybody's spread out all over the country. If you had Civil War breakout, people, wow, Uncle Jimmy lives down in Florida. Crap. Man, I don't want to go to war down there or whatever, So it's a little bit of a different dynamic from then to now. But, the tools that they have at their disposal, I've heard that. The biggest thing to me is if that went down, what's to stop a Russia or a China from coming in and just whoosh, taking over while our pants are down?
Well, that's what I was bringing up Yamamoto, what he said before, because that's, as soon as you disarm the public, first of all, where's our military? Oh, they'll protect us, Popeye, the military. Really? Where are they? Oh, that's right. We've sent them to everybody else's backyard.
Yeah. 35 countries in Africa alone, dude. 35 countries in Africa.
But they're helping protect us. Oh, wait a minute.
It's like you remember Smedley Butler when he was sent from place to place to protect the interests of the big banks or the oil companies. He was in China protecting Standard Oil's interests. Well, what do you think we're doing over in Africa? What do you think we're doing in Afghanistan? Where do those poppies go? Nothing's changed. People don't learn from the mistakes that our predecessors made. And it's just time we wake up. Time we wake up in this country. Yeah, I don't know. But folks, it all starts with paying attention, understanding not to have tunnel vision, and look around and try and reach the people that you can reach now. Because there's not a lot of time left. I have to say, when they're starting to talk about economic collapse on the mainstream media from a known establishment puppet like
Mouthpiece,
O'Reilly.
putts.
Yeah. I mean, now you're starting to, okay, things are getting pretty serious. And then we have Sandy Hook, and today you have those crazies down in Texas shooting at one another on a college campus. It always makes you wonder, all these little shootings going back to back to back to back like this. Before Sandy Hook and before Aurora, I mean, I don't remember this being publicized too often. It's really kind of ramped up here.
Because they weren't focused on it. Now, every time there's a shooting, they talk about it. Every time. The other day there was a shooting at a business college, and it turned out it was one person versus one person. And what they do is they go, oh my God, another shooting at a school, another shooting at a college. And that they run with the headline, and then an hour or two later it disappears, and it's not an important story because there was only 2 people involved. But they got the mileage out that they did because they put out the idea. Remember, perception. And somebody watching the news, all they know is every day they turn on the news and there's a different shooting in a different school. They don't understand the minutia of it.
Ooh, and how odd that it took place in Texas when Texas was one of the few states that told the federal government to kiss their rear end when it comes to the gun control.
That's right. I mean, what better way to kind of showcase it? Kind of like a up your rear end there, Texas, than that. Hey, Popeye, thanks for hanging out with us tonight, man.
Anytime, Joe.
And Uncle Johnny.
I promise to lock the back door next time, too, Joe.
Thanks, buddy. We'll catch you on the flip side, folks. We'll see you tomorrow night, 9 p.m. Eastern. Until then, have a great evening. Have a great day tomorrow. We'll see you later.
Good night, guys.
John, spark up that damn fryer.